Good morning. Today is Saturday. It is October 12th. It's about 6:45 in the morning. The sun's just starting to dawn outside behind me. And this is the first one of these I'm able to do back in the States. My wife and I took a 10-day vacation out in Germany. We saw a beautiful country out there between Germany, Salzburg, Vienna, and the Alps in Austria. It was amazing. But the few of these book reviews that I did while I was out there took forever to upload to this channel. Like literally hours upon hours. I had to put my laptop's sleep mode off so it wouldn't shut down in the middle of the upload. It was, it was something new. But here I am back. I'm getting well rested. The jet lag I think might be gone. And I'm here to talk to you about some of the notes I even wrote while I was out there taking train rides and such. But enough preamble. Today we are talking about a splatter western, which I'm starting to enjoy these immensely. This one's called Red Station. Okay, and it's written by Kenzie Jennings, and this is published by Dark Horse Press. I'm sorry, no it's not. By Death's Head Press. So, let me tell you, I found this one to be an interesting one. And it had a few components to it which brought into mind, some other different memories or different sources of things that I've read or seen on TV. But in general, the story begins with a stagecoach ride. You've got a cast of characters that are on the stagecoach going from here to there, and it's just a nice intro to some of these stories sometimes, because you have people that are in a situation, or in the room of a buggy carriage. They can't leave the scene. They just have to listen to what anybody's talking to, and they have to possibly respond to the occurrings that are going on in the setting. So you have almost a captive audience for whatever someone else is going to say because they cannot escape it. Or if they want to say, hey, why don't you just shut up and let us have an enjoyable ride, you've got to have that type of, arguments occur, which also creates more of the scene. Now, this kind of an intro I actually saw once before. It's the last story in the movie for The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. And I think the story's called The Mortal Remains. And the majority of the story follows the interior of a stagecoach as it's heading from point A to point B. And the people's dialogue back and forth within the stagecoach actually is the story. It'll bring up concepts that you have to kind of think outside of, the current setting to understand and to see where people's point of view are going, or, what kind of esoteric concept they're trying to bring up to the other people in their scene. And one of the things that movie does, and it makes it more interesting, is the whole time they're talking, the day is turning to night outside the stagecoach. So you start out with a brightly lit interior, almost like it's noon, and within 20 minutes or so, as the excitement and the adventure continues, it gets down to that night, that blue tinge setting, which becomes very important for their ending destination. So, just like that, just like here, you got a stagecoach going from here to there. You got 6 to 8 people crammed in the stagecoach, which is essentially like a Wild West bus back in the day, just much, much smaller. You've also got the driver up top who's, leading the horses, in the shotgun seat who's there, literally with a shotgun or a rifle, to repel bandits or any engine attacks that might occur during their journeys. Now what's happening is, in their journey from point A to point B, they're going to stop along the way at a certain overnight stop or a way station. And this place actually takes in passengers and visitors, gives them a room for the night or a bed, gives them a hot meal, and helps them break up their own journey. So, and especially here, because I think it's kind of in a quiet area on the edge of the Indian territories. So, guests will come there, they'll stay, and then move on. But being a splatter western, some of the people coming to stay are staying there permanently. This is their terminus. And come on, you know, this is called Red Station after all. It's the name of the book. And I did kind of foreshadow it when I mentioned that they're going to a way station, so you knew something was going to happen along the way. So now they're there, and it's interesting because we get a little transition part between weary travelers and where this story's going. You know, things don't just kick off right away. You know, people got to settle in. They're going to talk about, oh, I'm looking forward to tonight's supper and what it's going to be. Maybe some hot beef stew or whatever it happens to be. And the guests themselves, while they've been cramped in a buggy for a while, might try to cozy up to one another. Because now that they have a bed to go sleep in, they might want some company for that bed. So when the action does start to kick in, they do it, she does it, Kenzie does when she's writing this, in a kind of way where she starts at the outskirts and works her way in. So it starts out in the wide peripheral area and then works its way towards the inside of the house. So what do I mean by that? Now we're going to talk about the shotgun driver. You know, this is a character they flesh out a little bit. He doesn't like to sleep in a bed. He's an outdoorsman. He's got a bedroll. He sleeps on the ground. And he decides he likes to stay with the horses, like in the barn. So he's got his bedroll, make sure that they're all set, and make sure that he's going to make sure that no one steals the horses or does anything to them. You know. So, because he's out in the barn, part of the red aspect of Red Station starts with him. You know. You get into a little bit of this, murdering, killing appetizer. And then as that's done, you start moving your way towards the house, towards the main course. Okay? And speaking of main course, I love what the author has done here, And by here, what I'm saying is that Kenzie Jennings makes the transition from just a nice little jaunt through the Wild West countryside, And it goes from there to splatter, splatter, splatter. And it brings your guests who are sitting down to a meal from travelers to victims. And things really start to kick off. And the evolution starts with everyone sitting down to this lovely meal. Thus the speaking of main course. You see, we get some information on one of the travelers along the way. It's a woman of some mystique, and, by the way, some boiling vengeance. And she has specifically traveled in the stagecoach with this way station as her destination. And she's become impeccably prepared for the excursion, too. She's got savvy weapons hidden on her person, with mechanisms to assist with things springing out and being at hand when she needs them the most. But she's also careful, and she abides her time. So we're about at the halfway mark of the book itself, when the traveling cadre sits down, and the heroine actually begins her little tete-a-tete with the purveyors of the way station, and she asks about their German past. And she goes into their reasonings why they would be out there at the edges of nowhere, so remotely away from the rest of civilizations. Even going so far as to take jabs at them verbally, and actually doing it while speaking German. But she's looking to pick a fight. She's not disappointed. Because at this point, things are taking too far, and the effrontery which is being addressed, which is happening to the people who purvey the way station, just cannot go unaddressed whatsoever. And the Fraulein yells out. And then things get really started. And again, the splatter western aspect of this genre truly begins. And while they're doing this, some of the deaths of the cadre that are there are instantaneous. Some fight. Some even do pretty well in their fighting, too. In fact, that's one of the advantages it comes when you have a large cast of characters. An author can do this by adding more people without making it too cumbersome or trying to figure out who's who. Because when you get to scenes like this, you got to have some fodder to work your way through. Some killings that illustrate the points of the bad people, of what they're capable of. It's not unlike that old gag regarding the original Star Trek show, where they go to a planet and you have an away team, and it beams down to investigate something, and usually you have like 3 named cast members and the one red shirt security guy. And we've all come to know, guess who's not making his way back to the ship? Here, you had 6 to 8 people on a stagecoach to the way station. So let's just say you have a few red shirts that you can knock off for the effect and the events of the location to just hit the ground running. So let me fast forward a little bit, because I'm not trying to summarize every section of the book as I go along. But, before I do that, I'll just take a little side note and say, you might even be asking me or asking yourself, why am I even getting into this? Why discuss what happens in the book this much? And to that, I'll just say, just hold on a second, all right? I'll come more later on to discuss page count and page real estate soon enough. It's going to come. But I'll put a placeholder here to let you know what's going to happen later on. But from this point on, the remainder of the book is just the type of entertainment that I, and probably you, have come to expect. And I dare say, enjoy while reading these types of books. Okay? You get a small combination of some of the chair scenes, like in those Hostel movies, where it's like, people being tortured. Sometimes you also get a little feeling later on of the basement scenes going on in Pulp Fiction. And of course, you get the satisfaction that arises through watching any kind of revenge action sequences that happen. And they truly do happen in this book. It's kind of the point of this one character. And I will say, you get a truly very, very well done writing, or an example, should I say, of what a strong female character is. Okay, you've got a woman who drives all this action. She's competent, she's resourceful, she's vicious, and very action-oriented. And you don't do that with all that woke-like thing that's going on these days. Nowadays, the strong female characters tend to be made stronger by being elevated above men, let's say, who are typically your action genre people, but they elevate men in a lot of stories by they elevate the woman above men by diminishing men. And there's many examples about this, If you don't know exactly what I mean, check out Ruby Rose in the Batwoman show on the CW. She's going to become the new Batman, but obviously she's female. She'll become Batwoman. And the Batsuit is like the perfection of technological advancement. And she's like, we got to make some alterations to this. And the guy's like, why? And he goes, it'll be perfect when it fits a woman. Okay. You can fast forward on to Doctor Who. The 13th Doctor, they made a female Doctor for the very first time in the decades Doctor Who has been around. And when other supporting cast who have seen other Doctors run into her, they didn't think that she was the Doctor, and they were confused, because all the past Doctors were male. And she defiantly says, well, I've had an upgrade. And let's not forget everyone's favorite from the new Star Wars disasters, Admiral Holdo, who instead of answering simple questions like, hey, what's your plan, just insults the flyboy and relegates him to just sit down and shut up. Something you never see a man do to a woman. But that's like the more wokeness of elevating women by putting down men instead of just showing confident women. But Kenzie Jennings does that effectively here, and I give her full props for taking care of that. Our main lass here truly has her day in the spotlight, and she fills out the remaining quarter of the novella. And I can attest, personally, it's truly a sight to read. I'll take a small moment to mention also, in here, there's a really small subplot of one of these Hills Have Eyes people that are denizens of the way station. There's a character who's slowly, always, constantly watching the people from the shadows, through little peepholes throughout the house, and the person really, really wants this red dress that our heroine actually, is wearing, just to look pretty and whatnot for themselves. And I'm not going to delve into the subplot too much other than these sentences, because it really didn't add to my enjoyment of the story. And then there's even a little twist involved in the subsequent pages that wasn't particularly M. Night Shyamalan to be all that stunning, but you may find it interesting. So I wanted you to know that among this bad German family that's out there, there is something ominous to one of the characters that's within there, that they delve more than the other characters of the family. So overall, I do like getting into these splatter westerns. They add a great element to horror writing, and they generally tell an interesting story. And even sometimes, the story's interesting enough, even in the ones I've actually reviewed more negatively than others. So, that's kind of what this story has entailed for you. I hope you do pick up a copy or borrow it from somebody or get it from a library or Amazon it yourself, whatever you got to do. But let me get back to what I mentioned above regarding the placeholder, okay? And for this concept, I'll get into what I mentioned about the page real estate. And I'm going to touch upon this. And this is a concept that I noticed for the first time when I was watching the cartoon Samurai Jack, which I truly enjoyed. It was just an awesome thing that, I'm going to butcher his name, but I think it's Genndy Tartakovsky. He was the producer of. Okay? And he's got some pretty awe-inspiring shows under his belt. Besides his more youthful, almost children-oriented shows that he's worked on, like Dexter's Laboratory, or even the Powerpuff Girls. I've never watched those. But I learned about him through Samurai Jack. And then I later learned that he even began cartoons for, like, the Clone Wars, that original 2-episode story arc, which then spawned the rest of the series, which then spawned a whole bunch of things after that. But on one of the Samurai Jack episodes that really grasped my attention was the episode 7, called Jack and the Three Blind Archers. Okay? And it's one of these things where Jack has been thrust into the future by the evil Aku, and he's been trying to get back to the past every episode. And he learns about this wishing well that's on top of a tower. He's like, hey, I can use that and get back and then defeat Aku in the distant past before he becomes, the oligarch he is today. And the well is guarded by 3 blind archers, and they can kill anything from the tower they're atop of. And Jack soon learns that they're deadly accurate by the sound that people make as they approach the tower. So then he learns that he's got to learn to be quiet, or to know when things are louder than they should be. So he goes into a montage of meditating and learning how to be quiet. He puts on a blindfold and just kind of sits there in the forest. And he's just listening to the sounds of the fauna and the sounds of nature. And then what follows is a 2-minute segment where essentially nothing happens. You get pictures of a deer scratching at the earth, or water flowing down a river as it babbles, birds tweeting in the trees. And eventually, he's there long enough, snow falls, and he can hear the individual snowflakes crash loudly when they hit the ground. So it brings you to focus in the learning and his understanding of the hearing training that Jack is meditating upon. And keep in mind, these episodes are like 20, maybe 24 minutes long. And they put this as a 2-minute silence montage. And I said, the first time I saw this, I was like, oh my God, what a waste of screen time. But I like the show. I actually watched it a few times. And after watching it further, I was able to change my attitude. So I kind of recognized, oh my God, this guy's a genius. He has to fill 24 minutes every week with a new episode. And he found a way to essentially cheat at it. And in a way that makes sense. So I was able to appreciate it just that much more. And that's where I got that realization of that real estate of time. That concept I was able to grab a hold of and use it to view other things around. Oh, by the way, if you do like this kind of stuff and Gendy Teterovsky, you got to check out his Primal show, which is about a caveman and a dinosaur. And by the way, there's no speech in this. There's a couple grunts. So there's hardly any dialogue in this. It's just action on screen. And yeah, there is more of that eating up screen time by doing like sequences, but I saw it for what it was and truly enjoyed it, and it's kind of vicious too. So it just something out there for you to go check out. Now, page screen time. I have a bucket list item of my own, and I'd love to write a novel. In fact, I love to do that for a living, if possible. I have my own career right now, but transitioning is always a possibility if you're good at things, And maybe it's my desire I'll try one of my own splatter western one of these days and see if Death's Head Press is interested in what I have to write. And then if I actually get published there, I can then listen to some other schmuck just like me rip it apart in public or something like that. So, but on my hope to do this one day, I've been learning about writing styles and writing tips. And I've heard that there's the concept that like every line counts. Just like in a script in a movie for screen time. Every word counts for something. And it should bring you towards something. Always moving upward. It must build. It can pose or answer questions. Otherwise, it might be some form of filler that usually can be excised out in later drafts and maybe even in content editing phases. So, I took this moment here and I got to segue enough of why I brought this up. So, in this work, the book's here at about 135 pages. So you've only got 135 pages to tell the story you want to tell. And 30 or so of the pages are done on that cast of characters, on the introductions, and the stagecoach ride. And then there's about 10 for the killing of the shotgun driver. 25 pages or so in between where, you're at the way station and the dinner fun will finally begin. And then all that stuff kicks off around page 74. So then, you're about here-ish. You're about here-ish. So you only got this 60 pages left for the remaining of the fun stuff. Now, I can admit, either that pacing works for you or it doesn't work for you. I'll leave it up to your own judgment. Some like the journey. Some like questions answered, and they like them answered immediately. But some prefer the suspense of not knowing. Individual results may vary. Individual tastes vary. But at the end of the day, no one liked the ending of Lost. And they knew how many seasons they had left in advance before they can, get to the story ending that they wanted to tell, but they had enough time to lay it out and bring you there well. And they still didn't get to it properly. So that's the kind of thing is these books need their pacings. They need to get there, but they've got to get there. And that page real estate is important for getting there. I'd rather see the book a little bit longer if you're going to go into the details of the journey that much. So long as those details added for the journey might have some semblance of importance later on and not just, hey, listen, I got to find a way to eat up 40 pages. Let me have people just talking about something. Even in Reservoir Dogs from Quentin Tarantino, it starts with the guys in the diner at the beginning. but that's there to show you that these are just a regular group of guys, and they have their little tete-a-tetes with each other that they can really, just chat about Madonna and her singing, or about the night the lights went out in George's song that he heard on the radio recently. It was there to show you these are just ordinary dudes hanging out, and by the way, they're going to rob a bank and they're going to kill some people. So there's a dichotomy of before and after. Not to mention it was an entertaining section to start the movie. So I'm going to leave it there for you. Here I am about 26 minutes. I'm going to come back to you shortly. The next thing I'm probably going to drop out here is my review of the next splatter western, A Savage Breed, by Patrick C. Harrison III. Okay. Once I draft up my notes so I can reference them while I'm talking to you. But that's what I got for you today. Hopefully this might have helped you out or entertained you for a little bit of your life. Otherwise, cheers. I'll see you soon enough. All right, take it easy now. Bye-bye.